At this point, I should probably rename this podcast to All About AI instead of All About Identity. We got some pretty big news over the last couple of weeks. You probably haven't walked anywhere around the internet without hearing talk about Mythos, the Anthropic model that will be our 0-day generator, apparently. In addition to that, tons of supply chain related attacks as well. So the Team PCP stuff, the Axios DPRK stuff. We've seen a bunch of new releases on the AI side too. So outside of just Mythos, right, the rumor mills that we're going to get a new Opus model this week, maybe next week. The same thing on the ChatGPT side, on OpenAI side. We're probably getting a model soon, although another rumor is that kind of got delayed. And hey, and not to be left out of the conversation, ChatGPT also released a cyber version of 5.4 for security focused task, which I actually got access to and is not what I thought it was going to be. I'll give you guys a little understanding of that too. But just too much going on all the time. And as I'm trying to wrap my head around it, I'll try to share some of that knowledge as well with you all. Let's start with Mythos. What was the announcements? Is it a couple weeks ago now, or just last week? Is hard to remember. But essentially, Anthropic came out and stated, man, we've made a new model, and this new model is so good at coding, much better at coding than any other model that we've created. So much so that it's not just good at writing code; it's good at reviewing code as well. So good at reviewing code that you pointed at some open source project, you pointed at some code, it's going to find vulnerabilities in it, and not just any vulnerabilities. It's going to chain vulnerabilities together to come up with something even more interesting than what your normal vulnerability exploit SMEs can do at the moment. So the big claim is here, huge step up in capabilities, so much so that it is too dangerous to release. So what did? They created Project Glasswing, where they allow certain organizations early access to Mythos with the intention of those early organizations to be able to go and secure all the things that they have. So many big corporate entities in that list, but also like the Open Source Security Foundation and things like that as well. So there are many folks that have been brought into this. And I think when this first was released, the claim that this was just going to be a 0-day generator that is going to break the internet if it gets released was taken very seriously. And it really had a lot of people in the industry and outside of the cyber industry scared that this could be something. We finally reached that step where if it's not Mythos, it's going to be some other model that's going to enable attackers to quickly exploit vulnerable software and take advantage of that for malicious gain. And if this falls into the hands of a nation state, what does that mean as well, right? So lots of danger, lots of fear being conveyed initially. Now that we've gone a couple of weeks past, I think we're kind of at a state now where expectations around Mythos have been tempered a little bit. Some of this is even just due to silly things like, well, I shouldn't say silly, but like Opus 4.6 for many users are claiming that it has had a noticeable degradation in quality over the last couple of weeks. Some even throwing out like some stats to back it up. People I respect are reporting it. Like I see Dave Kennedy talking about like how substantially different and how noticeably different it's been. When your current flagship model is performing so poorly, apparently, what does that mean for this looming model that is eventually coming? Maybe not as great as what the claims are. That's some of the sentiment starting to go around. But in addition to that, it's just more criticism around some of the initial claims, right? And I think a lot of this is just a situation where just not enough people have access and not enough people can play with it to really evaluate this a huge step up. Is there something substantially different about this model? We just need more evidence. And I think that will come in time as this model and others like it get released. I did see a couple of interesting points though that I thought were worth diving into. And one is like, are we going to see an explosion of exploits for vulnerable code out there? And some of the arguments for it, saying yes, that we're going to see that is, man, the cost per exploit is going to go down substantially. It's in more people's hands. It's easier for someone to do. I mean, there's only a handful of people in the world that are capable of doing this type of research. And so once you put an agent that has that capability in more hands, what's going to happen. So like that's the one side of this. The other side of this argument is, man, well, that one really big exploit they talked about, I think the FreeBSD one, what did it really cost? $20,000 worth of tokens. Is that a reasonable cost for your average everyday person to pay in tokens to be able to make this happen and have the harness around it, even get those types of results? Maybe not. I do think that is, you know, it's a tough one, right? Because costs are subsidized quite a bit right now. So that $20,000 in token today, well, in 2 weeks, when everything switches to a usage model, well, maybe that's $40,000 worth of tokens, $60,000 worth of tokens. But I do think at a certain point, the models keep getting better. The cost mostly trending downward. So eventually, you're going to get at a point where, yeah, it probably is reasonable for a normal person to go and do some exploit discovery across multiple code bases at a relatively cheap price. We're not there today, it doesn't seem like, but I think that's something we could all see as a possibility in the future. And then you see some other arguments popping up around it too. Like, well, if you talk to most of the people who are dealing with incidents in the wild today, what are we seeing? And we're seeing there are more compromises attributed to exploits, 0 days, or more to generic social engineering to steal your credentials, phishing attacks to get your credentials. And the argument some are making here is that, yeah, like, cool, 0 days, might see more of them. It might see a lot more exploits for code. May also see the ability to fix those increase as well. Cool, those things might occur, but the real problem today is that humans are still being a weak link in that chain, and they're being exploited in all the normal ways. Most compromises that even I see, right, like on a general day-to-day basis, how are compromises occurring? Credential theft, Teams phishing, generic phishing, occasionally finding some publicly exposed creds. Now, on occasion, there is a big supply chain thing, or there are some exploits that have led to big compromises as well. But when we're talking about everyday attacks, you definitely see more. I think you see more traditionally identity based, stealing credentials, in some way getting hold of valid credentials to impact your organization. It's the more common scenario. But why is that? Well, there's more people that have the capabilities to do that than there are the people that have the capabilities to do exploit side of the house, right? That could be a reason. The cost associated with exploit development is substantially higher, like the financial cost as well right now. So there could be a world where, as the intelligence required, the capabilities required, the finances required to develop exploits get lower, maybe we'll see more of those types of attacks. So I guess I can see both sides as a potential future for us. But today, right, you're still seeing a whole lot more traditional attacks than some crazy exploits in an operating system causing something. And that doesn't even get into the kind of the post-compromise side of this house. So great, you got your exploit. What is the attacker doing after? If that exploit allows them access into your Fortinet device, what do they do next? That's the post-compromise side. And our model's getting better there too. And I think that's another thing that I just haven't seen a lot of people talk about yet. Like, just because we're talking about exploits getting better, well, it's going to be better at the other portions of these attacks too, especially under the right human guidance. In fact, I think I did an episode a few weeks ago on like doing a purple team exercise using OpenAI agent against an AWS environment where we tried to mimic scatter spider style techniques. And yeah, like, they're good. Agents under the right guidance do a good job with a lot of this already. All this to say, to summarize the Mythos situation, a lot of hype around this. The hype is dying off. A lot more people are starting to be skeptical of the claims, and there's not a lot of evidence to support what Anthropic's claims were initially. I think we will see that evidence eventually. I look forward to seeing it, and I look forward to seeing all the CVEs that come out of the folks in the Glasswing project doing their stuff. And in time, the capabilities for attackers and defenders are going to grow. Is it growing more for one than the other? I think being an attacker is generally easier than being a defender. So maybe the influx there is more than what we see on the defense side. But I think defenders are plus upping as well. All right. So now let's talk about OpenAI's news as well, right? So yesterday, April 14th, I guess 2 days ago, they released an article talking about a particular version of their model meant for cyber. And if anybody's doing cyber stuff with these models, you're probably finding that they are getting more and more restrictive, right? So trying to do any, say, exploit searching, mostly getting blocked by Claude doing it, I guess, most aggressively, ChatGPT next, and then Google just kind of lets you do whatever you want. But even things like when I was trying to emulate some of the purple team activity, I was trying to emulate some attacker behavior so I could then go see if my detections are working. Even a lot of that is just straight up being blocked immediately by these models and takes a little bit to get around it, which you can, but not ideal. So OpenAI is now opening up access to what they're calling GPT-5.4 cyber. And the way they explain this particular model sounds like it's just uh, you know, less guardrails around the traditional 5.4 model already, which is actually the model I prefer using the most at the moment. Is 5.4 personally, in an attempt to garner a lot of traction here and a lot of support. They've opened up requesting access to pretty much everybody. So you can go and request access and go through a verification process, which does include like showing some actual documentation on who you are to get through it. After you get through that process, you can be allowed into getting early access or getting some of these models with the guardrails less inhibited, right? So on that side of the house. So GPT 5.4 Cyber is the name of it. I signed up for this yesterday with the intention of like, hey, let's try it out and see what it does. And I went through the verification process. That worked out okay. And on the other side of it, I actually just was given access to what seems to be Codex Security. Now, Codex Security was actually particularly meant for looking at code for exploits. So you can sign up for Codex Security, or as you sign up for trusted access, this is the thing I got access to. I actually don't really see any way to like just choose this model, particularly in Codex yet. Maybe that'll come over the next couple of weeks and I'll let you guys know if so. But I don't see any way of like getting to this very specific model. What I do have the ability to do though, if I go over to Excalidraw, and it's right here, you can see as part of what I applied for yesterday, they said, cool, you can have Codex security. And what this allows you to do is put in a GitHub repo, and then it'll just scan all of your commits to that GitHub repo for however long you put it. In this case, I did from 2 months ago on, and then it'll let you know any findings that it has. A cool thing that it does is it does look at your code to try to understand, like, hey, what is this? So I gave it the code to Sandy Claw, our sandbox detonator for skills and prompts. And it kind of accurately understood what this code is for, and it made a good threat model. I don't have it all in here, but it made like a pretty good threat model for the things that you should care about. It realizes that, ooh, you're doing detonation. You probably need to care about sandbox escaping. You probably need to worry you allow multiple organizations to use this. You probably have to have some idea of tenancy. You have to have the artifacts that you allow people download. How are you handling that trust boundary? The sandbox itself, it's a malware analysis sandbox. So you probably want to allow it to do some things, but there should be some restrictions in there too, right? So, but it did a good job of accurately describing what's currently in play and the things that would be most concerning if we're out of whack. And then it had some findings, most of which were not anything terribly concerning, but a couple like, oh, okay, that's a good thing that I should take into account. So and then it allows you to apply a fix directly through this Codex security app if you want to do so. But that's what I got access to. So they're promising access to a particular model, this 5.4 cyber, but I just don't see anybody talking publicly yet about actually having access to this model. It seems like we all just instead are getting access to Codex security. So once we get on the other side of that and we do have access to the model, I'm excited to try out like what they did loosen on their guardrails and if that's really enough for the use cases that I have for malware analysis, purple team exercises, detection writing. I don't do a whole lot of exploit development stuff, so I won't be trying that as much, but I do have a lot of legitimate use cases that get blocked pretty consistently by models now, and I'm excited to to see what it looks like on the other side of this. All right. So as I was recording this episode, Opus 4.7 just released. So let's see if we can go through here and see if anything stands out to us here. I should have known better. Thursday is when these releases occur every time. I'm sure OpenAI is going to release something today, probably in a couple of hours as well. So let's see what Opus 4 does. Okay, so from Benchmark's stance, and obviously benchmarks taken with a grain of salt as well. But from Benchmark's stance, it looks like kind of across the board, everything's better with a couple of regressions, right? Agentic search, that's an interesting one to go down, I guess, relatively substantially. But overall, right, I mean, what we expect when we see a new model drop, we expect, it's probably going to be better than the previous ones. And when we see a big release like this, so I think I talked earlier about 4.6 seems to have had a regression recently where it's substantially worse than it was a couple of weeks ago. Well, as they're shifting GPUs to be able to shifting compute, maybe this is why, right? As they're shifting compute for this other model, it is interesting to see the Mythos preview on the side, so we can all still, without access to it, just gander at how big the numbers are in comparison to this one. Oh, this is an interesting portion as well. Looks like they're going to go through their own cyber. Hey, you want a less guardrailed version of Opus 4.7? You can. So just like we were just showing with the ChatGPT one, here is a way to go and request it. And it looks like you can get it through Bedrock as well. Is it generally available today? Maybe generally available and expensive like most models, but that's to be expected here. Okay, well, maybe I'll try this out. Nice to see that it's available. And let's also take a look here. This is the form that they want you to try to fill out to get access for cyber use case. So maybe I'll try that later as well. Okay, let's see what else we get. Okay, instruction following. This is something that GPT 5.4 gets called out for having better Model 4 consistently is right. Like you want something that follows instructions, you go for a Codex or a GPT 5.4. If you want something maybe more creative or more fun to use during the process, Opus is your guy. Interesting to see them calling that out. Oh, the memory side is an interesting one too. It's better at using file system based memory with Carpathy's kind of new or I guess not new, but popularized approach of almost having a wiki for your agents is cool to see models optimizing for that approach as well. Let's see how large the system card is for 4.7 here. A table of contents brings us to, golly, 1 pages. All right, so back over to the guide. Also launching today, more effort control. Cool. Do bigger images on the API. Sure. And Ultra Review and Quad Code. 3 free Ultra Reviews to try out. Okay. And then migrating from 4.6 to 4.7. Opus 4.7 is direct upgrade, but what are they? I probably could have guessed this one as well. Pretty direct upgrade, but hey, it's going to use more tokens. Interesting on this one, a new tokenizer. So your input tokens are going to be different for the same prompt. And then the reasoning levels producing more tokens is going to affect your output tokens as well. You can take control of it. All right, let's do something a little bit different here. For 4.7, let's give it a security task to try. This is an old um, challenge I made back in my tech defense days, where I give you a PCAP, I give you a starting point, try to figure out what occurred, what happened, and let me just do that. To just paste this article in this. I have a challenge for you, a network forensics challenge. Okay, so I attached a zip file, which is the PCAP is within that. And yeah, I'm giving it kind of all the context. And I think this will be a fun one to just see if it's capable of doing it. Also interesting to see if it can do here, right? I know if I fired up Quad Code, it'd probably do it better, but what can it do within the normal chat client? Okay, so while that's working on the side, let's talk a little bit about what this is, right? So this is a challenge I made, again, 10 years ago. That's crazy. So this is, at the time I was doing a whole bunch of stuff on the tech defense side for trying to teach cyber stuff for folks. So I don't do anything with tech defense anymore. This is kind of just old stuff. But I figured it might be a good challenge here. Look at that. It found out the password was infected. I wonder if I wrote that anywhere in here or if it just realized it. Yeah, I just realized that. That's cool. So the scenario for this PCAP is essentially I fired up a machine. I launched the malware on it while just like doing the full system recording to include I'm doing a big PCAP dump, starting with just the PCAP. And I didn't give anything else in this one. I have a memory challenge one where you could go and do some things in volatility as well. But this was go take this PCAP and this is your original thing that fired. You got one alert that fired from Snort. This is the signature for it. That's your thread. Go pull the thread and tell me what you got. We did have some really awesome submissions to this, so maybe I'll pull that up in a second. There you go. Yeah, so our winner for this back in the day was D for It, who eventually ended up becoming a coworker at over at Mandiant for a bit, but a great report written here. So this would be kind of like my gold standard for understanding how well Claude does here, Opus does here. How well does it compare to what D for It got? So really cool report in here. And now we wait. All right. We're still kind of at the same step here of trying to get T-Shark installed. Interesting. All right. It looks like it finished. Let's see how it did. So it took a long time, so much so that I stopped the recording and then it just started back up again once it was finished. And I should not crazy long. I guess I'm being impatient here. Mostly having a hard time figuring out how to get T-Shark working in its container, and it ran into a bunch of problems and finally went with a non-active version. Interesting. Okay. So now that it has the PCAP, let's see what it thinks about it. So doing a basic capture info. So running a T-Shark command just to get an idea of stats likely. So over 40 hours, that's interesting. That doesn't seem right to me. I'll have to go back and look. It's been a while since I've looked at this PCAP. Lots of protocols. Yep, I would expect that. Victim server seems to be this one here. And I was doing this all from DigitalOcean. HFS, if you're not familiar, HFS is like a HTTP file system, not the storage version of HFS. This is an basically a web application for serving up files that was used a lot back then, probably doesn't even exist anymore. I don't know. And from that HFS server, downloaded several files. A lot of you probably recognize what some of these are already. And I think I remember when I was making this challenge, I tried to add in some extra noise just to make it hard to find the really bad things. So I had a lot going on this particular box. Cool. And you can see finally doing some netcat and back.pl. Don't remember what this was, but probably a reverse shell written in Perl here. Cool. I need to compare this over with D for It's version of review. I love seeing it go session by session. It's starting off with the assumption that there's going to be some bad stuff in here. So a lot of times you hear people say like, hey, can't I just use AI for detection? If AI recognized all of this stuff occurring, couldn't I just have it sitting on my firewall, looking at every packet that goes by and then tell me when it's good or bad? Well, not really, right? This is good for triage. It's good like once you have a thread, not really great for detection logic itself. It can write some detection logic, but if it's trying to hold in context all the things that's going on, a little bit different. In this case, right, it knows that this is a CTF challenge PCAP. There's going to be bad stuff in it. So it's leaning in with that bias. Now, good bias to have when you're going into a CTF. And in this case, it works out. But if you were just sitting at everyday traffic, a model that is particularly looking for bad things is going to find bad things even when they don't exist. All right, cool. So droplet stuff. Cool. All right. It did what likely occurred. Linux server compromise. Yes. Open proxy abuse. I think some of that. Yeah, there you go. Nice. This is the interactive hands at the keyboard portion of it. Love it. HFS. Nice. Sees all the files. Linux DDoS bot. Let's see. Netcat, obviously. A Perl reverse shell. Gosh, this is such a fun challenge to make. I should do more of these. Great. And then after they have the reverse shell, what is the attacker doing? Installing a bunch of stuff, pulling netcat, fetching whatever that is. I don't remember. DDoS activity. And if I remember correctly, I actually grabbed like some live stuff for this as well, like legitimate malware. Okay, cool. Let's critique some of the signature side, right? So part of this network challenge was not just making a report, but also what detections should we put in place for Snort and Yara and whatever else they wanted to do. We'll see some Snort rules here, which mostly look to be okay. So just looking for HFS as the server type. HFS is the server type. This is a harder one. What I don't like about this, right? So we're doing flow to server established. So we're going on the connection to the server, is looking for a GET request as the HTTP method, and then immediately doing a PCRE um, on that. So looking for any exe. Now a content match looking for particular header information. But this is going to be running a lot of PCRE. Where is it's also just look at this, right? Like from a non-standard port. Where is the non-standard port part of this rule? It's home net any, external net any. So it's not saying like non-HTTP. It's just grabbing from any. Uh, yeah, any to any. So this is a weird one. I don't like that rule. Okay, fine. Now I know Florian would be looking at these YAR rules and freaking out. Like, yeah, this is so loose, but I'm fine for this type of challenge. And it looks like Claude reached its tool limit. If I hit continue, what else did it actually want to do? Okay, it's going to try to actually extract out the files from the HTTP stream, which I did most of these over a normal HTTP stream. So you can carve these out. And if you're trying to do that manually, there's a whole process for that, which you all probably know. But cool to see it do that as well. And I think we get the purpose here. This actually gets me feeling like I should make like my own little cybersecurity benchmark where it has to do a little bit of reversing, has to write a few rules, has to look at a PCAP, maybe do some memory analysis. That'd be a fun one to try out. It is cool watching the thought process on what is deciding to triage. This is just vanilla Opus 4.7, right? I'm not feeding it any skills. I didn't do anything other than just give it the challenge. So this is its default mechanism for doing analysis, and it's cool to see that thought process. All right. And here's its kind of final timeline of the attack, which again, pretty good. I need to review for accuracy, obviously, but overall, this feels pretty all right. I would give it a great score for doing its triage. And I would say its detection writing, not so great score. Like got some work to do there. But cool. Overall, did a better job than I would have thought. I don't have a comparison to 4.6 because this is the first time I've tried running this, or earlier models. But this might be a fun one to compare going forward, and maybe even make some more challenges around. Yeah. So let me know. You guys think we should work on a cyber benchmark here? Just like a few tasks we would expect most IR folks, detection engineer folks, SOC folks to be able to do. That might be a fun one to try out with all the models going forward.